that the board of directors approve the budgets for 2025 in two parts. Part one, a projected operating surplus of $520,876 from $27,553,066 in operating expenses, requiring $8,197,570 of participating member levy, and requiring $626,156 in cost apportioning agreements among members. And part two, a projected capital deficit of $2,338,219 from $15,483,600 in capital expenditures, requiring $6,535,881 of participating member levy. That's the motion brought before us. Is there a mover and a seconder, please? Skylar, you'll move. Seconder, Brian. Thank you. I will ask Tracy.
Is this a mover for the first motion or for the second motion? Because they're split, right? It's two separate motions. Two separate motions.
Two separate or
two separate
policies?
We'd like to.
Okay, we'll proceed. Okay. So I'll circle back then. We'll do it in two parts. So Skylar, you'll move the part one and Brian part two. Okay, thank you. I'll turn to Tracy to provide her comments.
Sure. Just wanted to highlight that, yes, there was the report provided in January outlining and identifying presentations to councils and any comments received. I can confirm that there hasn't been any additional comments provided in writing on our budget from our municipalities or anyone else. I do have a brief presentation to go over some of the changes, but I'll wait until after we have the second motion on the floor to highlight some of the changes that have been made to the budget package as refinements have continued to be made since the October presentation was provided. I'll highlight some of those through the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Any discussion from our board members? Sandy, go ahead, please.
Couple things, and maybe it's going to kind of mix operating and capital together, but might as well get them all out at the same time. Page 14 of the agenda, which is page 2 of the budget, you've written a comment that our category 1 programs and services are broader than those of many other conservation authorities due to the size and scope of the water and erosion control structures and program. So the question, how many of the other CAs have 3 or more major flood control structures, 8 or more dikes or flood walls? And are any of those municipalities part of our CA, part of our member municipalities? My sense is that when you compare our conservation authority, we're very different than all the other ones that our member municipalities deal with. It's more in line with the Grand or even the Toronto. So it's almost like trying to compare Kettle Creek or Lower Thames that the city deals with to Upper Thames. It's like St. Thomas to London. So can you speak to that, Tracy?
Yes, through the chair. Yeah, that's very much correct. When we're dealing with many of our adjacent municipalities in the Southwest, like I saw with Bayfield, Kettle Creek, Catfish Creek, the St. Clair and the Lower Thames, none of those CAs have the size of structures. The most comparable is the GRCA, the Grand River Conservation Authority. They too have 3 large structures that they operate and have the same similar flood retention through their structures. I know Chris could probably give a lot more detail, but just generally speaking from the size of the programs as well, not just when we're talking about flood control, but having the ability to offer education programs, land stewardship programs, the camping programs that we have. There's no other CAs that have that same breadth of programs and services that we offer. So Again, the grant would be the similar one in this region that other CAs have. And I'd also point out that the grant have a bit of a different funding mechanism too. They have almost between 700 and 800 cottages that they have land leases for, and they actually receive significant revenue through those cottage programs. So it's always a challenge when you're comparing different CAs because each CA does offer something very different. But certainly when we're talking about those mandatory programs and services in category 1, they have the same flood control structures or the same monitoring networks for water quality and water quantity, forecasting and warning systems, and the extensive planning and permitting reviews that we have. So with that, if you have any further questions, happy to answer.
Yeah. On that same page, you've noted the fee freeze again, but I think we missed the chance to highlight the impact. So I see that the difference between our goal of a 50% recovery, it's only 32% in the budget, but how much is that in dollars? Would it be enough to cover the operating deficit, as an example?
Yes, through the chair, I can confirm Jenna had looked up these numbers a while ago. It's in the neighborhood of $400,000 of lost of revenue with that gap between the 32% that we're recovering now and our current policy, which is 50% cost recovery. So
that does have some small impact on the levy because we have that deficit we need to make up. The last piece that I wanted to ask at this point was page 15 of the agenda, page 3 of the budget. There's a mention of flowing through costs of counting entire year costs in 2025 and not in 2024. I assume that has to do with when we hire people. So I just want to make sure that when you're planning the budget and you're aware that people are coming on board at different times of the year, the budget is timed accordingly, that we're not looking at a situation where we're budgeting full year for people who are only going to be part year. So can you speak to that?
Sure. Through the chair, and Christine may want to elaborate as well, because it's very much a function of our software that we use, Questica, for our budgeting purposes, and that allows that refinement. We can have start dates and end dates to different contracts, and delaying those hires to when we anticipate those positions will be filled. So that allows us greater detail in our budgeting process so that we really are knowing that, yes, if we're planning to hire someone, we know we're not hiring those positions until summer. That's when we can put in an actual start date to those projects, and Questica will do that math for us to establish what the wage burden is for carrying that position for that portion of the year.
So I know when Dean and I met with Mayor Morgan to talk about last year's budget along with Councillor Cuddy, we made the point, and I want to make sure this is still the case, we were still unaware of when we were going to get that big contract with the federal government. And the mayor asked us about hiring. And we were very clear to the mayor at the time that we as an organization here don't hire people until we actually know we have money that's going to come in. So is that still the case?
And through the chair, that's absolutely the case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Paul, go ahead, please.
Comment, I just thought of in reference to Sandy's first two questions, where the comparison between the Upper Thames and other conservation authorities that municipalities may be involved with. And also the second point about the regulation freeze, because many of the municipalities in our watershed are among the fastest growing in Ontario. And so there is a lot more stress on our regulations and department than there is on many of these other conservation authorities. So the ongoing freeze by the province on those fees has more impact on us. And as Sandy and Tracy referenced, has a definite impact on our budget and the amount that we need to levy to cover for that. So as part of our ongoing lobbying, I think that needs to be pointed out that we are one of the most impacted by that ongoing freeze, and it needs to stop at some point.
Thanks, Paul. And duly noted, and for those of us that had the opportunity to attend Roma in January, the fee freeze question, when we had the minister session, the fee freeze question was raised twice. And first time, the minister refused to budge on the fee freeze, unlocking the freeze. It was a non-starter for them. And the second time the question was asked, the minister pivoted with his response, and help me out with this, Brian, but the minister was trying to correlate. He was trying to say that the conservation authorities that aren't as efficient in handling applications and doing their administrative work, the ministry wanted those conservation authorities to be more efficient in line with those conservation authorities that were more successful in handling applications and administration. So it's a catch-22. We're just kind of going around in circles here with the minister at this point. But the point, you're right. The point, we still have pressure. This is still impacting us. And one of my goals as the chair will be to continue that lobbying effort with our local municipalities in our watershed, but also with the provincial government. The costs and the responsibilities aren't going away anytime soon, and we need to come up with some kind of a way for the province to provide further assistance. So, any other questions? Hugh and then Brian.
Just a question on benefits of both dams. Like, what benefit do you give a municipality for being above a dam, and how you kind of cost that out? Like what is the benefit? Because water goes downhill, so.
Yeah.
For me, I never have to worry.
Through the chair, I'll start, but I know Chris is anxious to jump up too. But certainly when we look at our benefit-based, who is the receiver of the best benefit, or the most benefit, we go back to the funding formula for when the structures were built. That was when there was an agreement and the partnership by many cases, the province and the federal government and municipalities to build these structures. So that's the same benefit-based apportionment that we use today. Looking over to Chris to see if he wants to add anything further.
That's fine. I just didn't know that you went back to those initial agreements. I just never thought of the question.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Well, that's good enough.
Okay. Good question.
Brian, go ahead, please.
More about, is it appropriate time to comment on the motion? Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, this budget is probably historic in that it's probably one of the first ones that we've had a surplus mentioned, and that's one of the biggest problems we've had, that we've always had deficit budgets, and how do we overcome that? We know it's not sustainable. And so I know staff's done a lot of work on this. There's been a lot of conversations at Audit Finance about how to move forward. And I think this budget does. And Chair and I had the opportunity to meet with Mayor Morgan just on this last Friday. And, we talked about those things, about the struggles that we're facing financially and how do we go forward. But we also discussed the goals of the City of London and all our member municipalities. And I think this budget responds to that. We can't have these huge increases last year was worse, but we're trying to get the organization in a place where it's stable and it's financially sustainable over a long period of time. And really that's where it's going with this budget. I think the board, I saw a lot of agreement around the board when we had that presentation about, do we want to offset and what the cost of that is going forward? This is a tough decision, but I think it's the right decision, for all of our member municipalities and the Conservation Authority going forward long term, make sure we're on stable footing. I'll leave comments to the capital portion later on, but, you know, this organization has had to go through a lot of modernization. It's going to continue to do that. Forced modernization as well as internal modernization, make sure that we're ready for the future. And I think that's what this budget does. And I'm happy to support that portion of it. It's imperative that we make these changes if we're going to be financially sustainable. And I keep harping on that for a reason, because we need to be, if we're going to be around for another 77 years. We just can't keep relying on deficits and reserves, because we don't have them. And we have a lot of work to do. We have structures out this window that are getting significantly up in age. Those are going to require more and more and more. So yeah, I think that we all have to remember as well is that the restraints put on by having those category 1, 2, and 3, we can't keep switching over. There's some crossover that we can do, but nothing like what was available before. So those category 1 funds have to come from somewhere. Fee freeze, we can't do anything about that. That's not our choice. We know what we would do if we had the choice. So we have no choice but to put that on to our member municipalities. I've really appreciated their support in saying this is not what we want. Again, Mayor Morgan did say that he would be happy to keeping on that drum for us. And many others that if we can find ways to get funding and save money, he will be right there to advocate for us. So that's great to have him as a partner, and the whole city of London, obviously, and all of our member municipalities. I think having everybody on the board here is a great thing. You've been able to go back to your municipalities and share those concerns and get that support as well. And maybe we can work further to try to bring those down. We came in with what the City of London's budget asks are. We're in line with that, so that's good. So we're trying to be good partners there. Of course, not everybody's been happy. It's hard. Again, as you said, it's a wide, vast watershed with different priorities. It's a hard one to do everything, but I can certainly support this. I think it's the responsible budget that we need.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Tom?
Thank you. I'd just like to echo some of Brian's comments. I think that we need to get to a point where we can level things out, and I think we need to compensate our staff appropriately, and can't do anything without people. And I do think there is a limit to these type of increases in future. And I would like to see that leveling out. I mentioned that in the first budget. I think there's a limit to the degree that we can bring the province on the fee freeze, because you don't get these big swings in development. Like we have seen that push post-COVID, like there's people preparing for development, and there may be a little bit more with the increase in the 25-year supply versus or the 30-year supply versus a 25-year supply. But I think that is getting a little thin, having used that 2 years in a row. And I would hope that we don't see another double-digit increase in 2026. So I'm prepared to support this budget, but again, I've said it before, but it does have some limits. And I think when we look at everybody in their day-to-day lives, we're getting CPI increases. We're not getting double-digit increases. And I think that is there is a limit to what the taxpayer can bear at the end of the day.
So, Sandy, go ahead.
Just to build a little bit on what Tom had started, my recollection is when we talked about 2026, we were pretty confident the last time we talked about it in line with what London had included in its multi-year budget, which is the starting point. And much less than this year's change. Are we still, I mean, it's early, it's 2 months into 2025, but are staff confident that we're not going to have double-digit increase in 2026? And it's not even going to be 9. It'll be in line with what the City of London is expecting from this organization.
Yes, through the chair, I can confirm that's the goal of staff as well. To keep it a more stable. That's been our messaging out to municipalities as well. This is really to help us deal with our past deficit budgets, and having the service level that we need to fulfill our legislative responsibilities. So the past couple of years has been getting us up to that level, and hoping that we don't see additional legislative changes that require more from us and change those service levels. But the intent is moving forward to have more reasonable reviews. I don't know if Christine wanted to add anything else, or she's good.
No, I keep my eye on it.
Anything further, Sandy?
Yeah, kind of related is the reserve situation. We've talked about that a number of times. It's in our budget document, it's table 9. There's a piece of narrative that says further development of the capital budget process and asset management should improve the situation, but there's still a category 1 deficit in the reserves, so. How are we thinking we're going to progress on a better reserve situation over time?
I'm looking at Christine to answer that one, because that is tied very much to our asset management planning. And as we develop our asset management plans, we'll have a better sense of what reserves are appropriate in which categories of programs. Again, when we look at reserves, there seems to be healthy reserves for our campground operations, but also recognizing that there's significant capital improvement that also will need to be done in those areas. Our concern, again, was mentioned, Brian, looking at the structures and the aging infrastructure that we have, what are appropriate reserves to have to maintain those pieces of infrastructure. Still working out the plan on that. And as I said, as we further our asset management planning, we'll have a better sense of where that will need to go.
So I guess in the long term, though, it might, if the reserves don't, particularly capital, don't keep up, there may be special capital levies applicable to some of these larger structures.
Through the chair, yeah, that's what we've mentioned, and it may be specific municipalities that see more of those costs.
Yeah.
Again, looking at the benefit-based and where those benefits were derived from.
And an example would be the change between early versions of the budget and the final version that's in front of us for London Dykes. That's an example where the benefiting municipality has a special levy that makes a difference. But when we're talking about trying to keep levy down, we tend to be talking about the operating levy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Anna, did you have your hand? Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me and really appreciate everyone's comments here on the budget. I do like that word stabilized. It is being on the board a number of years. It's nice to be a little bit more stabilized as opposed to the deficits that we've had to incur in the past. I have a question around the provincial funding confirmation. I know we've received that. No agreements have not been signed yet. Any updates or any concerns there with the provincial funding?
Through the chair, Ken, to answer Anna's question, there has been some recent funding from MECP and I always forget the new acronym, UMAFA, related to some of the work that furthers strategy. So with that funding, that's been added to this. This is one of the changes that has now been included in the budget. So I think that's welcome news. We hadn't seen some provincial contracts for a while, but kind of mid-year last year, we did start to see some additional funds from the province. So I don't know, Teresa, if you want to add anything else about the projects.
On their way to them. Good to know, good to hear. I just want to make a further comment on the chair's comments around the advocacy that he is going to be doing in regards to the freezing of the provincial fees. I think that's really, really important, not only for the board, for all municipalities to keep that pressure up. disappointed to hear the comments that happened at Roma, but I think that is something we cannot stop advocating for.
Paul, and you had something, Tom, as well? Oh, go ahead, Paul. Or Peter, sorry.
Thanks for coming, Paul. I heard Tom and Brian talking about sustainability, and that's great, but we heard the same thing last year, and 20% is not sustainability. And I appreciate the effort that management and has gone through to put this budget together. If you ran a business, and many of you are farmers, okay, I used to be a farmer, many of you are farmers, run a business. If you ran a business this way, you couldn't survive without, increasing revenue, selling assets, doing something. And I just feel at this stage, that this isn't something that I can bring back to my colleagues in council and support. And again, I believe, just like Tom said, in good wages for employees, absolutely, 100%. But I don't think we can continue on next year to 26. I think Sandy mentioned 26 might be a year that we can, or maybe Tracy mentioned that the number can come down. I mean, that's wishful thinking, and I hope it's true. But at this stage, I can't support this, but I will support the surplus, the part one, but I won't. I'll be voting no against part two. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Tom?
Yeah, just picking up on Danny's comments again, making sure that we are looking towards stability and keeping an eye on reserves. We do have some similar problems as farmers in that we are cash poor and asset rich. And that's all I will say without going into a land strategy. And I think we have looked at a land strategy quite comprehensively. And I think that's something that we can look at to ensure our stability, but not use it for operating.
Thanks, Tom. Brian?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just wanted to try to address some of Peter's comments there, because just want to try to make sure I have full understanding, because my understanding is that this budget is in line with what London is requesting in their budget documents. And it's not a 20% increase, it's 15% increase. And so the other portion that I just want to make sure I understand is the two sections, one's operating and one's capital. So there is a deficit of capital.
I think that's 40%.
Yeah, so there's $6.5 million capital levies. So the problem is that we've had to right the ship of the organization. Some of those changes, a lot of changes last year that drove that budget, the provincial legislation that made us make those changes, staffing levels, and it was like that category 1, 2, and 3 budget. This one's about making sure it's financially sustainable. I can never buy the thing of running a business versus an organization. This organization was never set up to make money. It's to provide services, provide safety, to provide all the things that conservation authorities do. It's like recreation at a municipality. You're never going to make money from it. It's a service that people subsidize. You try to do it as efficiently as possible. That being said, I think this is, and we're getting closer to there. It's really hard to just do everything at once. You have to make sure those changes are coming. I think that we've heard from from our general manager that the direction is to make sure that we fall in line with at least the City of London's direction. If not all of our members' direction. I think that's the kind of clear there. So I hope those comments would provide some comfort in knowing that I think the organization is going in the right direction, and I feel confident that we can meet the goals set out.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Anyone else? See any? I guess the only thing I can add into the discussion, not so much for this budget 2025, but to try and address the overall concerns about 2026 and the future. Brian mentioned our meeting with Mayor Morgan, and some of the discussion focused on how can we do things differently? That we can alleviate costs, but and still maintain our current level of service. That was, it was very broad. There were no specific details, but that thought was brought out. The other thought, getting away from the fees, was advocating for augmented funding from either the province or the federal government in terms of the assets, the capital assets, whether it's the WECI program or base funding or other initiatives. I think if we can gather the numbers, gather the information through the asset management plan, and make the case to the provincial and federal government that our assets, and I think I mentioned this at a previous board meeting, our assets are no different than a highway or bridge or water treatment. They provide a public function in terms of safety and hazard management. So our assets should be placed on the same footing as all the other municipal assets that there are in Ontario. And as such, they deserve the same or more consideration for funding, given that funding has been curtailed recently. So to Tom's point, yes, we've had the discussion. Double-digit increases are not sustainable over the long term. As Brian has said, we've had to get over the hump in terms of making adjustments. So once we get past the 2025 budget, one of the tasks for the board in the future, as I see it, will be to figure out, to get into these questions deeper about the 2026 budget, our reserve situation, our asset management, and how do we manage this to the best of our ability. But also, how do we communicate to others that this situation needs help? Like that's kind of where I see it in a nutshell. I don't want to get too far off into those discussions, but after the 2025 budget, yes, we still have the challenges. The challenges remain the same, and we have to work together to figure out a strategy and come up with some decisions on how we secure the future. So, was there any other questions or comments on part one of the budget? Okay, I think we had a mover and a seconder. Can you?
I could do the quick presentation just to
Yes,
kind of highlight
sure.
that before the start. On screen. The items were already discussed, so I should be able to move through this fairly quickly. Again, just some of those highlights of the budget we saw back in October, and some of the changes that were made. And when we look at our draft budget, next slide, please, Emily. We did certainly consider that it was a draft and we would continue to work on it even at that time. Constant refinement as the year progressed, and certainly having year-end figures to inform finalization of this budget was very important. We generally illustrated a balanced budget for our category 1 programs. There's a little bit of a deficit, but only in the neighborhood of 5%. I think there's opportunities to have some reductions in expenditures that we'll get into in a later slide. But we recognize that, yes, we're talking about our category 1 programs and services. They are very much services that support mandatory requirements under legislation. So that's something that we looked at. That levy amount that was suggested back in October has not changed. Next slide, please. Some of the key considerations with this budget was really focusing in on our category 1 programs and services, those legislative requirements that require that long-term stable funding. But as well with those types of programs and services, we have very limited alternative funding sources. Because again, these are legislated. There are services that we're providing. So when developing the budget, the 15% increase in the municipal component for revenues for category one operating expenses was considered. That increases the municipal share to about 64% and provides for looking at that reasonably balanced set of category one programs and services. Certainly saw some surpluses in other program areas, but we want to make sure for mandatory programs and services, we're not unduly impacting those reserves. And again, it's about that consistent and dependable, stable source of funding for those legislative requirements to continue to deliver those programs and services. Next slide, please. We did look for alternative sources of funding. We looked at recognizing that our member municipalities only have a certain tolerance to absorb the provincial downloading. We continue to investigate partnership opportunities, our user fees, alternative funding sources for all programs and services. But again, recognizing that those fees for planning and regulation and permitting for, again, supporting category one programs have been frozen since 2022 and resulting in approximately $400,000 in lost revenue annually. So it's a large impact to that program. There's significant impact on both category 1 and 3 programs of the large federal grant. That's a 5-year program with a possible extension of another 5 years beyond. We mentioned it's providing to those category 3 programs and services, but by charging overhead costs to that program that are eligible under that program, we're able to recoup some of those overheads that support our category 1. So other considerations, we looked at our budgetary and reserves policies to guide the development of our budget and future budgets. This will be a useful tool and allow us to more carefully consider those reserve balances as well to meet our fiduciary responsibilities. We're certainly committed to fair and competitive compensation for our staff and glad to hear those comments today. The budget includes 3% increases in wages across our organization, our pay grid. We certainly require keeping our capital infrastructure in good repair. Many projects have already been deferred for some years, and the provincial capital grants have not been increasing. That's that WECI program. Happy to hear that there's additional advocacy. Mayor Morgan's comments about increasing the funds to those WECI programs to ensure we're able to undertake those capital repairs. Next slide, please. Kind of the main considerations reflecting our wage costs with a recent inflation and remaining competitive. The new federal grant, that's a significant increase into our overall budget to provide those phosphorus reduction programs. We are undertaking some GIS upgrades, but really when we're looking at our broader FTE and that stability, a big part of our budget is about wages, and we're not seeing any new staffing beyond those that are fully funded through those grant programs. Next slide, please. With our communications, we circulated our member municipalities. We included the draft package back in October. We also included a draft budget overview, the front page that's shown there. And then for each municipality, we had an insert, I called it, to highlight what the budget looked like for their municipalities. Budget discussions happened with staff, and particularly those municipalities that's our capital budget increases as well, associated with our structures, and those presentations were provided as requested. Next slide. So with the capital projects, as mentioned, they vary significantly depending on benefit-based distribution of our municipalities. There's considerable work planned for 2025. Costs rise, and of course, when we're talking about aging infrastructure, that's something that municipalities seem to understand very well. We have applied for alternative funding sources to offset those capital costs, the WECI program to our member municipalities. And there are some of those projects already approved, and updated project costs are reflected in the 2025 budget. So from this, what's included in your February package. Next slide. When we look at our overall, looking at operating and capital, the two parts that we're seeing in the recommendation, our total levies to our municipalities are 14,733,451. But looking at the brown beige we see the distribution between what are our general levy, both operating and capital amounts. Again, general levy primarily is used for operational expenses, neighborhood of 6.7 million, 6.8 million. And then the blue areas are showing where the benefit-based structured levies, both operating and capital. Not operating is operating and maintenance activities. But then the benefit-based capital is significant this year, almost 6 million. So seeing that distribution kind of helps visualize the overall levies and where they're going and where they're derived from. Next slide. A few of the changes that have been made since October. We certainly looked at our operating budget revisions, increasing our deficit. Initially, it was a little lower. But when we're looking at the overall deficit cost for category 1, it was about 1.5%. The change is mainly driven by 80,000. We shifted from operating to capital. So again, looking at that integration of both operating and capital, the two affect one another. But that's kind of the main driver for that change. We did have a number of revenue edits. We had increases to camping fees incorporated. We did receive a bonus from WSIB for our participation in the Health and Safety Excellence Program. And then that recently confirmed funding from MECP and OMAFA projects. Next slide, please. Operating budget revisions. We had expense edits as well. Payroll rates were issued in late November, so changes to EI and CPP were included. We did receive a reduction in WSIB rate premiums as well as our bonus for the excellence program. We've revised the board per diems. We've delayed start dates for unfilled positions. As Sandy was mentioning earlier, we accurately reflect the time in which we expect positions to be filled. An insurance increase of 3% is included, which was actually a reduction from the fall draft. We did see increased depreciation expense estimates. Again, once we had those year-end results and our year-end asset record keeping, we're able to finalize and confirm some of those. And then broadly, some upward increases for cost estimates. Again, as we're refining some of the work plans and getting contractors and consulting actuals, materials and supplies and staff training, we did see some increases there. Next slide, please. There's certainly some opportunities for additional cost reductions to expenses that are not yet fully known. We are undertaking a comprehensive procurement review for fuel systems, uniforms, supplies, waste management, facility supplies. So it's expected through that review, we may see some cost reductions. We're undertaking our service review and streamlining initiatives. And then also we've had some recent retirement announcements where staff will be anticipated to be filling in at a new lower wage step on the grade than those experienced staff that would have been at their full job rates. So I'm not quite certain what those reductions in expenses will result in, but we certainly expect some change there too. And as always, we update our budget mid-year. And the last slide, Emily, with generally our category 1 general distribution levy amounts remain unchanged overall from the circulated budgets to our municipalities. I would say with our experience budgeting and our record of sourcing alternative funding in year, we used to call that our soft revenue, and opportunities for cost reductions. And I think we feel quite confident that the operating deficit will be reduced as well. With that, any questions as well?
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Any further questions on Tracy's report, Sandy?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my recollection was that the levy, the percentage was coming from levy was 67% on the October draft, so it's actually been reduced to 64% coming from member municipalities, which were allowed to do 100% if I recollect.
Yes.
Can you remind the board, the 64% is, my recollection is a little more than what we've traditionally done, but not a lot. Can you speak to that?
Yes, through the chair. Historically, it's been around 59–60%, I believe. Again, when we're dealing with percentages, it's always a challenge because different costs each year to impact that. But certainly around that 60% mark.
I want to just thank Jen Hawley and her staff for the WSIB bonus. That's always a nice thing.
Mhm.
And it's a credit to the work that she does with her staff and with all staff and getting that bonus. Wanted to ask, Jim's not here, but Jim has always asked the question about, we staffed up because of the provincial requirements. And this board was, it was indicated to this board that some of those positions would be temporary positions. Has there been any movement in that? Or have these people been reassigned? Again, just in Jim's name, because he's not here, we want to make sure that those positions didn't creep up into becoming permanent positions rather than what we were told that they would be temporary for the time needed to meet the provincial requirement.
Chair, some of the positions were intended to be permanent. Certainly, we recognize the timelines that we have to maintain for our planning and permitting and regulation processes required more staff to do the work. There were some projects identified for updates to our floodline mapping. That project isn't completed yet, so it's still ongoing. But the one intent was one of the communication staff may not be needed at the end of the project. And their communications efforts are very focused on the updates to the flood hazard mapping. We're still working on that. That was planned for a few years. So that position's still in today. When we come to the deliverables, large portions of parts of staff time were dedicated to that work plan. Now, with that work done, some of it is ongoing as well, and some of that work isn't done. Moving on to, for lands, for example, management plans for each one of our properties. The recommendations that came out of the broader strategies, looking at our lands inventories, and if there's any additional properties that may not meet our needs and our goals and objectives that were identified in strategies. So I'd say that many of those positions were intended to be ongoing, but where there are, we'll look at that when the project's done. Those projects aren't quite done yet.
And I would assume in some cases, those people that might be moved to different projects,
Exactly.
like the federal project or the provincial project. Last question is kind of, well, more of a comment, is one of the, sitting in various tables, I've noticed or been pointed out to me that the non-residential construction price index across the province is really skyrocketed since COVID, much more so than the CPI. And I'm sure every municipal councillor knows that from its capital projects. And we're not immune from that. And that's going to have an impact on capital levy and, and budgeting. So we'll see how these things play out during 2025. If some of that has moderated, but it's still, like every other price increase, it doesn't drop very much. So it's recognized that the downside of having delayed some of these capital projects has really meant the price has gone up. But it is what it is as far as that goes. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. And I guess to your point about the non-residential construction cost price index, we'll find out next week and days following how much more that index will change in the ongoing economic decisions that are being made in this continent. So point well taken. Anything further? Looking around the table. Okay, so we're still on 6.3 part 1. I'll read the motion out again. So the first part of the motion, that the board of directors approve parts. So part one being a projected operating surplus of $520,876 from $27,553,066 in operating expenses, requiring $8,197,570 of participating member levy and requiring $626,156 in cost apportioning agreements among members. So, could you remind me who the mover and seconder were?
Secondary.
I think it was Skylar and Brian.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so Skylar had moved that, Brian had seconded that motion. We've had a rigorous discussion about that. So at this time, I will state that in accordance with Ontario Regulation 402/22 and the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority's administrative bylaw, voting on the non-matching levy is by weighted vote. And I'll ask Michelle to call the weighted vote now at this time, please.
Anna Hopkins for the City of London,
Yes.
Peter Cuddy for the City of London,
Yes.
Skylar Frank for the City of London. Yes. Sandy Levin for the City of London,
Yes.
Brian Petrie for the County of Oxford, Paul Mitchell for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
George Wade for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
and Scott Sayre for the County of Oxford is absent. Harj Niger for the City of Stratford,
Yes.
Tom Heeman for the Township of Lucan Biddulph,
Yes.
Tom Heeman for the Municipality of Thames Center,
Yes.
Jean Coles for the Municipality of Middlesex Center, Dean Trentowski for the Municipality of Westford,
Yes.
Jim Craigmile for the Township of Perth East, Town of St. Mary's, Township of Perth South is absent. And Hugh McDermott for the Township of Perth East.
Yes.
All right, believe that's everybody. So I'll ask our general manager to confirm if the vote passes by weighted majority.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Okay, thank you. All right, then moving on to part two of section 6.3, 2025 final budget consideration. The motion is as follows: a projected capital deficit of $2,338,219 from $15,483,600 in capital expenditures, requiring $6,535,881 of participating member levy. Looking for a mover and a seconder for that motion, please. Ryan will move, seconder, Anna, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Motion?
Just want to check one thing that is the main reason that there's a projected capital deficit based on the big change between October and current on the London Dykes project. I assume the City of London wants to pay for the continued work on its dikes, in particular the West London Dyke.
I don't think
Is
so.
that oversimplifying that
Yeah.
too much?
Yes, it's oversimplifying, simplifying. I can say the word, simplifying. Christine, you have a little bit more insight on the capital side.
The capital deficit is due to the campground spending that's expected to take place in 2025. It's not flood control spending as much.
So just to repeat, so everyone heard that. I know Anna was having a hard time hearing
Sorry.
that the key driver is the planned spending at the campgrounds for projects that are included there. And there's that reserve available to use that spending. The money's there,
Yeah.
we're depreciating it.
And that's where we have healthy reserves.
Yes.
Thank you.
Page 6 has the flood control spending at a surplus. Okay. That's good to know.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Christine, for that information. Any further questions on this section motion, second part? Last call. Don't see any. Okay. All right, so once again, in accordance with Ontario Regulation 402.22 and the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority's administrative bylaw, voting on the non-matching levy is by weighted vote, and I'll ask for the council to call the weighted vote.
Ian Hopkins for the City of London,
Yes.
Peter Cuddy for the City of London,
No.
Skylar Frank for the City of London, Sandy Levin for the City of London,
Yes.
Brian Petrie for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
George Way for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
and Scott Zaire for the County of Oxford is absent. Arch Niger for the City of Stratford,
Yes.
Tom Heeman for the Township of Lucan Biddulph,
Yes.
Tom Heeman for the Municipality of Thames Centre,
Yes.
Jean Coles for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre, Dean Trentowski for the Municipality of West Perth,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott for the Township of Perth East,
Yes.
and Jim Craigmile for the Town of St. Mary's, Township of Perth South, and Municipality of South Huron are absent. Is absent.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. So I'll ask our general manager to confirm if the vote passes by weighted majority.
Yes, it does.
Okay, very good, thank you. So once again, thanks to our staff for compiling this information for the board's consideration, and appreciate all the work that you do throughout the year to track this and generate the information so that the board can have all the information they need to make informed decisions and have a thorough discussion and debate. And thanks to my board colleagues for their attention and consideration on our budget. It's encouraging to see the level of interest and level of commitment that our board has in this process. So once again, thank you. We'll move on to item 6.4, application of floodplain freeboard and interim policy direction. I will read out the motion first, and then we will get into comments from the general manager and the staff. The motion is that the board of directors endorse the proposed direction for implementing an interim policy approach with the floodplain freeboard area, with detailed policies to follow within the updated planning and regulations policy document. Is there anyone willing to make move that? Anna? Something by Peter. Okay, turn the floor over to Tracy or staff to provide feedback on this, please.
Sure, I'll just ask Jen if she'd like to have some introductory remarks to the report. We're asking questions.
Great. So as the board is aware, the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority is currently going through updates to both our hazard mapping as well as our policy document. So both processes are happening simultaneously. And as part of the flood modeling work that's been going into the hazard mapping project, our engineering staff are mapping the regulatory flood hazard and including a freeboard on top of the flood hazard. It's a 30-centimeter freeboard, and it's really to account for various uncertainties. So the flood hazard is an estimate, and it's generated through modeling. And while the information and data that goes into our modeling is much better than the information that we used to have that generated our old flood hazard lines. So we have much better data that's going into that modeling. There's still, it's still a modeled approach. It's still an estimate. And so there's still uncertainties associated with it. And so this freeboard is essentially a factor of safety that gets added on to account for those uncertainties. And this also includes uncertainties related to climate change. So often you hear references to the freeboard for climate change, and I just want to be very clear that it's an uncertainty freeboard related to all kinds of uncertainties, including uncertainties related to climate change. So we do know that the impacts of climate change certainly can have an impact on the frequency and severity of flooding events. And there's provincial direction through the PPS directing municipalities to consider the impacts of a changing climate as it relates to natural hazards. However, there really isn't any consistent or clear direction on how that consideration gets incorporated into flood hazard modeling. And so this is the approach that our staff have been taking when updating our flood hazard, is to generate the regulatory flood hazard and then add this 30 centimeters of freeboard. So as the board is aware, in the fall, we started undertaking some public consultation on that updated mapping, which included updates to the flood hazard along the Thames River through the City of London. And some of the key feedback we got through that consultation process, particularly from the City of London and from the development industry, was that they weren't happy with that addition of a freeboard. And there was a very clear request that be removed from the flood hazard, that we only generate the regulatory flood hazard and not include that uncertainty freeboard. So we've had a fair amount of internal discussion with staff. We've also had some detailed discussion with City of London staff about this as well. And so what the direction that the recommendation before you is really to separate the two areas. So in our mapping would show the regulatory flood hazard as well as this uncertainty freeboard area. So this floodplain freeboard area would be identified separately from the flood hazard. And we're suggesting taking as an interim measure, a different policy approach. So generally, our approach is to identify natural hazards and direct development away from it. So our policies within the flood hazard are fairly prohibitive. And so what we're suggesting in this freeboard area is to take a more permissive approach. So we would be looking at more permissive policies. So a new development would be allowed within this freeboard area with mitigation measures in place, mainly in the form of floodproofing. So that's really the approach that we're suggesting taking with this floodplain freeboard area. And we're also suggesting this go through the administrative review officers in the same way that some of the other policy directions we've brought to you recently has been the direction. So whenever this approach is being taken, whenever we're applying more permissive policies within the floodplain freeboard area, that we're recording that, we're documenting it. That's a decision that goes to the administrative review officers, and then it will come back to the board through a report on those decisions that are being made on an interim basis until we get our policy document updated.
Thank you, Jenna. And just reminding everybody, we received the situation correspondence from well, this approach. So I wanted to make sure bring your attention to that. I don't answer any questions.
Thanks, Tracy. Mark, go ahead, please.
Yeah, through the chair, not to make this more complex than maybe what it is already, Jenna, but questions here to you. But if you look back to 1937 and Hurricane Hazel, I know there's been a lot of land improvements, buildings, apartment buildings, parking lots and stuff since then. How would this freeboard mapping compare to what happened in 1937? I just don't want to sort of think that any kind of extra mapping is either necessary or unnecessary to any future development.
Yeah, so changes in land use have all been incorporated into the updated modeling. So compared to where the last time our mapping was updated, we've looked at how land use has changed and looking at those permeable versus impermeable areas. And that all gets factored as part of the land use calculations that go into the floodplain modeling.
I guess just as a quick follow-up, you would almost necessarily think any kind of significant, not even significant, even minor changes in topography could be a so-called dry land now, but under this freeboarding system could be in a so-called floodplain, and it could be 3 miles or 4 miles away from what would be deemed to be the Thames River or any kind of natural watershed flooding area now. Is that possible just based on a rainfall event or a significant 50 or 100-year storm? Just to sort of think what you're looking at. So future development areas, there's a low topography area that is well outside of the current floodplain.
So was the suggestion that it could be 3 to 4 miles outside?
Well, could it be? No.
It would have greater bearing on areas where it's flat. You know, it would extend because you're adding, it goes further out, but not generally the type of amount that you're speaking to. And of course, a lot of our discussions are around Thames River right now. Fairly valley type structure, so that it doesn't even go very far at all. So, but the policy approach is what's being suggested rather than including that within the prohibited area. So,
That's good.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Any other questions? Anna and then Sandy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a follow-up to Jenna's presentation, the interim reporting back to the board, how's that gonna look like and what can we expect?
So right now, staff are recording any files that are coming forward where a decision's being made by the administrative review officers in a table. And so the intent is to bring a report back to the board quarterly on those decisions. So that information that's being recorded in a table will be updated and included with the board. And the planned report is to come at the next board meeting in March.
Thank you for that. And maybe just a quick follow-up, the staff work on this is a little bit more detailed than it would be otherwise. Sort of with the two, with the reporting mechanism coming back to and the work that staff are doing. Just want to have a better understanding of the work involved here.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be too much, too onerous for staff. So really we're applying existing policy and for the most part, but it's where the board has made some new policy considerations and staff feel it's appropriate on a particular file that they're reviewing. Then they're recording that in a table that's coming to the administrative review officers, which are myself and Tracy. So we're reviewing those and making a decision, and then that's whatever the outcome is being recorded in that table also will be reported back to the board.
Thank you.
Sandy, go ahead, please.
Further to Anna's point, and well, I just want to give some idea of how the board's going to hear about the implementation of the interim policy regarding floodplain freeboard area. We've got agreement from LDI, which I think means we have agreement from the City of London staff. Is that fair to say? Okay.
There's been specific meetings with City of London staff.
All right, and ultimately that's gonna, the ministry is gonna have a look at that before we implement it, or we're gonna implement it on an interim basis before the ministry reviews it? How is that piece gonna work?
Again, through the chair, the ministry won't necessarily be reviewing.
Okay, so this is our decision.
This is our decision.
Okay. And then this policy ultimately go into the planning and regulations policy document. So we're gonna get an update next month on the other interim response mechanisms. I'm assuming this will be in there, but there won't be a heck of a lot in a month. Do we need to make a motion that there be some regular updating of the use of the interim interim policy approach for this and our other interim measures before the new manual gets done? So I'm looking, I guess now it's a part B that staff report back to the board quarterly, summarizing the instances and outcomes associated with the use of interim response mechanisms contained in this report and the previous reports on interim measures. So is that, I don't want it to be too onerous, but is that a reasonable requirement?
I think that was our intent.
Okay. I always like to document stuff like that. So
We appreciate that.
at some point where there's motions, I want to make sure there's that part B that comes with this. The other piece that I wanted to raise is, and this kind of goes back to when there was a report to the Planning and Environment Committee of London City Council towards the end of last year on this whole floodplain issue. And it caused, I think, some confusion on the part of the members of there. Because I don't think the staff report had enough information in there to help. Because one of the things that came up was that our regulatory flood is the 1937 flood, which is different than what the GTA uses and a lot of other municipalities, which uses Hurricane Hazel. But the way the report came across was like the 37 flood is a greater standard than the 54 flood, which it ain't. And it's in regulation now, thanks to what we as an authority did in the 80s, as I understand it, in agreement with the City of London, that in this watershed, it's the 37 flood. Not the 50, not Hurricane Hazel. But the reaction of the committee was, oh gee, why are you doing this? You're obviously doing something more stringent. That's like, no. It's the other way around. So I think it's important that we, as an organization, go back to Planning and Environment Committee. And I had a discussion with the chair. And Councillor Lemon opened the door for Upper Thames to provide information to the Planning and Environment Committee. Because like everything else, just saying things once doesn't mean anything. If it did, McDonald's wouldn't have to advertise. We wouldn't see more than one campaign sign during an election. So, so, well, let's make sure, I mean, is staff working on getting in front of the Planning and Environment Committee, at least at London and maybe in some of the other municipalities, to help understand what our role is and isn't? For example, we don't approve every application, as an example. Yeah, we get circulated, but that's just trivial stuff. So is staff working on something with the chair of PAC?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, the discussion with PAC was initially about having a longer training session with PAC members to fully understand the complexities of planning and regulations and how we fit into the Planning Act and our regulatory responsibility. Unfortunately, that idea shifted to a 10-minute presentation from PAC. That'll take staff a little bit more time to put together. It's a new presentation to really kind of hit on the highlights. I know staff are intending look at opportunities. Is there a way to go back maybe over a series of meetings to provide bits of information so that that's provided over. As well, we're working through updates to the planning policy manual and intending to have meetings with our municipal planning partners as well about updates to those policies. So a few different avenues in the works for getting more information out to our municipality. And if you want to add anything further.
Yeah, I guess through you, Chair, I appreciate your comments, Sandy, about the flood standard. I think that's a common misconception that we hear frequently in planning and regulations, that we're regulating to this ridiculous flood standard. And the reality is that it's a reduced flood standard from what we used to regulate to. And that there's many conservation authorities that regulate to Hurricane Hazel, which is a much larger event than the 1937 event that we regulate to. So that's information I'm always trying to push out. So I appreciate your comments on that. And I guess I would just echo Tracy's sentiments that we were really excited about the opportunity to undertake a training session with the members of PEC, and we appreciate your efforts, Sandy, in engaging the chair of PEC and trying to get that idea formulated. Less excited about the idea of a delegation presentation in front of PEC, which actually is only 5 minutes, Tracy, not 10. And so it's just, it is hard to try and capture all of the information and training that we want to direct at PEC members in a 5-minute delegation presentation. But it's certainly on the to-do list. We will I think we're committed to going and doing that. So it's just a matter of setting the date and getting that going. But we do need to give some thought into what we can cram into that 5 minutes that's impactful and important to PEC members. So I'll maybe work with you a little bit further on that, Sandy, too.
Okay, thanks, Tracy, Jenna. Tom, go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick point of clarification, like, so you're talking about the 33 flood, is that the 100-year flood line or the 150-year flood line, or is that 150 like part of section 28? Not relevant in this discussion.
So the 1937 event was a real event that we experienced within our watershed. And it's equivalent to a 1 in 250-year storm. So it's higher than the 100-year, but much less than Hurricane Hazel.
So if I can jump in and just add on that for clarification too. We follow the technical guidance set out by the province, and the 100-year that you mentioned is the absolute minimum regulatory standard. But where you've had a higher historical event, that needs to be your regulatory standard. So back in the late 80s, the City of London actually requested a reduction in the standard from Hurricane Hazel to a lesser flood event standard to allow for additional development. That request, after going through a consultation process with all municipalities, receiving resolutions from each municipality, submitted to the province, it was approved in 1989. So that has become our event standard now. And used since then, and then further confirmed through the regulation 4124 that is our event standard. So a little bit of history.
You're good, Tom?
Thank you.
Okay. Brian, you have your hand up?
You know what, we're running late here, so I'll keep my comments short. I do want to support this proposal. I think that the authority was given a goal in the provincial policy statement to account for climate change, but how do you do that? This was a range, but I do want to, I really want to appreciate the cooperation and the collaboration between staff and our municipality and our development community to come up with a system that is workable and that can be identified to keep people safe, but at the same time allow development to take place. And I think this interim approach has the checks and balances to make sure that that happens in a safe way. So I can support that. And certainly we all know that we're waiting for further guidance from the province. And then when we get that, we can implement something more specific in policy. But I think this is just another example of UTRCA willing to work to try to make sure that we are ahead of the game and make sure that we are being permissive where we can, but still keep people safe. And certainly I do appreciate, we can't do that without the cooperation from our development community and our member municipalities to come to the table and have those discussions and bring those ideas as well. No one organization should have all the ideas. You need that different input from around the table. And so I think this is a good success story of that, much like our other intern policies that have been put into place. So certainly support of that.
Thanks, Brian. Sandy, you mentioned about the quarterly reports. Were you seeking to make an amendment to include the quarterly reporting into the motion?
Yes, I was, Mr. Chair. So, yeah, kind of a part B that we have be asked to quarterly report on the interim policy approach for floodplain freeboard area and other interim measures as appropriate.
So you're willing to submit that as a motion for amendment. Anna, you're willing to second. Any further discussion on that amendment? Being none, and ask for a vote on that amendment. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? No, I don't see any. That's carried. Thank you. And any further discussion on the main motion that was made? Don't see any, so we'll call for a vote on that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, item 6.5, mileage and honorariums. So before we had discussed this at the last meeting, and before you as a report on how we intend to go forward with remuneration of members and per diems, honorariums. travel rates and so forth. Tracy, did you have some information as well on that first, please?
Sure, through the chair, just briefly, again, building on the discussion from last month, recognizing there's other tools that we use to look at for mileage using the CRA rates. Let's start just embodying those updates in policies rather than having regular reports coming back. Looking at per diems, looking at provincial requirements for per diems. And then again, looking at the honorariums and applying a wage adjustment that's the same as what staff received to keep those
Progressing in the same manner. So that's all I would provide.
All right, and I guess further to Tracy's comments, this report aligns with the suggestion provided by Board Member Paul Mitchell last month. It's used by the Township of Zora related to their honorariums compensation, utilizing other established methods for determining these increases improves our transparency to our member municipalities and to the public. I'll open it up to questions or comments from the board. Brian?
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, you'll move. Seconder? Tom? Go ahead.
I'm very supportive of this. I can tell you that, you do receive an honorarium as chair, but I can tell you that some weeks that work overtook my responsibilities as mayor. And so it is a small honorarium, and there's a lot of work that goes into that from the chair and the vice chair, depending on what the board asks them to do. So I think that's a good way to keep that keeps up. And certainly I can't agree more with Paul that having that in policy, it makes it a lot easier for staff to be able to administer the mileage and make sure that it's consistent, and we're following a policy that's been duly thought out by the federal government.
Thanks, Brian.
Do we know who our agricultural rep will be yet?
And through the chair, we have not heard any confirmation from the province if there's been a decision on that yet. But we'll let you know when I do. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I'll read out the recommendation that the annual honorarium for the chair and vice chair be adjusted to align with the annual salary grid adjustment for UTRCA salaried and contract staff, and that the per kilometer rate be updated annually to reflect the Department of Finance Canada annual automobile tax income tax deduction limits and expense benefit rates. Mover and seconder. We had a mover and seconder.
Yeah.
Brian and Tom.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Okay, item 7, reports in camera. Well, we don't have any. So section 8, reports for information. First is the annual report of administration and enforcement, section 28. And we want to Tracy or staff to lead us on that.
I'll just provide a couple of comments and just note that it's always should be recognized that while meeting the timelines is impressive, our goal of our staff is to undertake the administration and enforcement of section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act to ensure people and property are kept safe by regulating hazard lands. Doing it within those prescribed timelines is even more impressive. So just again, we certainly we'll ensure that we post this information to our website to meet our legislative requirements as well. But staff should be commended for their efforts to meet these legislative requirements. And it's a huge accomplishment, and congratulations to staff for doing such a great job.
Thanks, Tracy. Sandy, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree. Staff does a tremendous job when there's complete information and it moves through the system very quickly. The challenge is that the graphic on page 50 of the agenda in between the additional timelines to satisfy complete application requirements. And that the same thing happens at the municipal level. of what is and isn't required. One of the, and I know the consultant we've retained to look at streamlining is going to help us in that area as well, I hope. Province hasn't helped us by no longer requiring pre-consultation on applications, either at the municipal level or at the CA level. But I'm wondering if, like in healthcare, every now and again, they do file reviews on cases to see what can be done better. So have we spent any time with proponents doing some kind of file review so we reduce the gray area in that graphic so that there's fewer times where there's disagreements as to what's complete? Because there's always two sides to the story, but if we can get closer to agreement of what's needed, that means there's fewer delays. So do we do that from time to time with some applicants?
I can speak to that, to you, Mr. Chair. And as you mentioned, yeah, one of the aspects with the new regulation is it does identify pre-consultation and the benefit of pre-consultation. But in that regulation, what it says is that we may consult, but applicants request it, then it's required. So it doesn't give us the ability to require it if the applicant doesn't want to. But certainly we are trying to promote through that process. You want streamlined application review and more efficient timelines. We need to have the opportunity to pre-consult, identify what's required. We also like the opportunity to have our technical staff work with their technical staff to define the scope of a study so that when it does get submitted, we've reached a point that it's provides the answers of everything we want questions to. So that is an important process that needs to be done. We're trying to get better at educating that, promoting it, looking at doing some recent website updates to really promote the importance of pre-consultation. Unfortunately, it is a two-way street. We need both sides to acknowledge that and work with us to pre-consult before those applications submissions come in. But it's certainly a thing that we're trying to really communicate and advocate for.
I guess though, Mr. Chair, what I'm talking about, it's almost like a post-consultation. That you take a look at a situation where there was disagreement and work together to try and reduce the amount of times that happens. If it's something you're noticing with similar applications, perhaps from the same proponent each time as well. So it's improving, it's continuous quality improvement essentially. Where you don't have the opportunity to do pre-consult, you look at working with maybe those technical folks to try and narrow the gap and reduce the time. So just an idea to take away. Hopefully it's something that staff can find the time to do, and hopefully the industry is interested in doing that as well. I see Mr. Wallace smiling, so that's always a good sign.
I think that's a good recommendation. Certainly we'll take that back and find ways of how we can look at that. I think the other component is through our policy document update. We are looking at technical guidance appendices that'll help also spell out some of that information in advance as well too. But point taken, and we'll take that into consideration as we move forward and implement it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. Any further questions or comments on this report? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the Board of Directors receives this report for information. Moved by Hugh, second by Mark. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving to 8.2, section 28 violations, annual summary report. Leonard or Tracy, would you like to elaborate on that at all?
Jenna, I'm sure she's welcome to answer any questions if you have any. Say a few.
Yeah, I can say a few things, just that I'm happy to report that the number of violation notices we issued this year was down significantly compared to last year. So last year we issued 18 violation, and this year, or in 2024, it was 5. So a considerable reduction. I think You know, our staff have been struggling with enforcement for a number of years now. I think beginning with COVID, we saw a real uptick in enforcement activity violations that were occurring, and whether that was just because people were at home and doing projects, that they were maybe naive to the fact that they needed Conservation Authority approval, or whether there was the impression that everybody was at home and no one was watching. I think it was likely a combination of both, but we did certainly see a lot of violations trending upwards over the last few years. And so it's also enforcement's a challenging thing because we don't generate much revenue from it. It tends to be a real drain on staff time and resources. And if we move forward with prosecutions, it's quite an expensive undertaking in terms of legal expenses. So it's sort of weighing the cost benefit of or sort of going after people that are in violation of our regulation. But I mean, it's also very important because if we don't undertake enforcement work, then people will think they don't need to get approvals from us at all. So it's finding the right balance. And I think we did bring some enforcement guidelines to the board earlier this year, which you endorsed, which provide kind of a risk matrix and guidance for staff in terms of which activities we go after and how seriously we pursue certain violations. So that's been good, but it's also been nice to kind of see that we're not seeing the same level of violations that we have been over the past few years in 2024. So we'll see if that continues, or maybe we're just not seeing them. I don't know, but certainly kind of, I think, good news from this report.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. Anything further on that? Don't appreciate the work that Jenna and her staff do in this regard. It's not the easiest, having been a quality control manager myself in construction. Sometimes you have to put your bad cop hat on because the regulations are there, and it's our duty at the Conservation Authority to uphold the duty of the responsibility of enforcing those regulations. So we appreciate the work that's being done in that regard. Okay, so we have a recommendation before us that the Board of Directors receives this report for information. Moved by Paul, seconded by Harge. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. 8.3, Thames River Current, the February edition. That was inserted into our agenda. Some good information there on the updates on the phosphorus reduction program. Our tree planting program is in progress, and I believe the deadline to buy trees is coming up soon here. So encourage everybody to engage in that and read the excellent information in the February edition of the Thames River Current. Tracy, do you have anything further?
Yeah, I was just going to add, thank you, Chair. When looking at annual statistics, we saw that we had over 2,943 subscribers. And then on average, the email open rate was over 50%, which is way above average. So happy to hear that the news is getting out there with subscriptions and people are reading it.
Excellent. Hopefully we have a recommendation that the Board of Directors receives this report for information. Moved by Jean, seconded by George. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, moving on to section 9, reports, committee updates. 9.1, it's an audit, no report at this time. 9.2, hearing committee, January 28th, 2025 decision. We had at that meeting, it was a brief meeting. We just discussed the upcoming hearing committee dates for 2025. Those were approved by the committee, and that's basically it. So, any questions or comments about that? We did discuss that there are new hearing committee guidelines being put forward, and those changes will be incorporated going forward into our administrative bylaws and, incorporated into upcoming, hearings as well, so. No further questions or comments on that. Recommendation is that the board of directors receives that report for information. Thank you, second by Anna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, section 10, notices of motion. So at this time, I have to ask, does anyone on the board have a motion to bring to the floor for a future meeting? Once, twice, last call. Seeing none, okay. None noted. So this time it's about 11:15. So we will take a 15-minute break so that staff and guests who've been invited to join our meeting can do so. So we will reconvene in about 15 minutes.
So we just say
11:30? Yeah, we'll make it 11:30. So we reconvene at 11:30. Thank you.
Still break for that.
Thanks, everybody. Please find your seats and we will reconvene here with Trixie giving her opening remarks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Oh, I'm going to turn on this mic and make sure that works in the back there. I'm getting some thumbs up. That's great. Just want to welcome everyone. Also, to a little bit of a reminder, we are in this room that has the microphones on the ceiling. So the green lights mean that that's on and they're really sensitive. So they pick up a lot of sounds. So just want to make sure that staff refrain from those side conversations because they'll be picked up on the video recording as well. Just really want to provide an opportunity right now. For those of you, there's lots of new faces in here to introduce our board members. So I'm going to ask our members if they could stand up and identify the municipality they represent and also any other roles that they have on our board and committees. So I'm going to start with Anna because she's eager.
Hi, everyone. I'm Councillor Anna Hopkins. I represent Ward 9 for the City of London.
I'm Councillor Paul Mitchell. I represent the Township of Zora. I'm also on the Finance and Audit Committee.
George Way, Ward 4 Councillor of the Township of Southwest Oxford, and also represent the Township of Norwich.
Hi, I'm Skylar Frank. I'm the Ward 11 City Councillor for London, and I'm just on the board. I also run any committees like these extra people. You guys do a good job.
And I'm Jean Coles. I'm from Middlesex Center. I'm a new councillor. I started in November. And I'm in Ilderton, if you want to know where that is.
Hugh McDermott, Deputy Mayor of Perth East, and all the water you get comes from my municipality. Suck it up.
I'm Harsh Naikar, Deputy Mayor of City of Stratford, and I also on the Finance and Audit Committee.
Brian Petrie, current mayor of Ingersoll, deputy warden of Oxford County, and I serve on the finance and, the hearings committee.
Sandy Levens, city appointment from City of London. I'm on Finance and Audit, Hearings Committee, and also Source Water Protection Committee.
Mark Schattenberg, City Council's City of Woodstock. I'm also on the Hearings Committee, and I'm the incoming Vice Chair.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Dean Trentowski, Deputy Mayor for West Perth, current Chair for Upper Thames Conservation Authority. also chair of the hearings committee, member of the finance and audit committee. And West Perth, similar to Perth East, we're on the top end of the watershed. So whatever water Hugh doesn't send your way, then you send the rest.
Thanks for that. Again, I always think it's a good time for our board to be involved and see the number of staff we have here at the office. And also for staff to recognize our board members. You might see them in the hallway sometimes, so know who they are. This morning, we had the regular portion of our meeting. Our budget was passed for the year. The budget is a big, it really is about our plans for the year. And allows staff the resources to do the work and the great work that everyone does here. So there never seems to be a shortage of work. We know we've got lots to do, but it again is the mechanism for how we can do that. A few things this morning. I've got some remarks from both our past chair and a welcome from our new chair. And then we have opportunity to have a little bit of a look back what we've done in 2024 for our accomplishments, and then our presentation of conservation awards, as well as service awards for some staff here. So with that, I'm going to ask Brian, our past chair, to come up. I know he was looking for an opportunity to have some remarks to staff.
All the begging work, so.
Or there too.
Wow. Hopefully it won't be one of those pointers, because if it is, it's a bad day. Apologize, I just need to pull up my notes here. Well, we're gonna hear a little bit about 2024, but I'm a history nerd, and luckily Michelle gave me about the first 8 years of minutes from the UTRCA. So we're gonna go through every single one of them. You know, I gotta stress that conservation authorities are unique. You know, our strength comes from its watershed-based model that incorporates both urban and rural municipalities, and that's really key. Because there's a saying, and it may just be mine, but water is lazy and lets gravity take it where it wants to go, all the way from the first. It does not care if it's in a rural or urban environment. It does what it has to do. This simple fact has forced us all to work together around the board table, whether we come from an urban or rural municipality, and learn from each other. We must take that knowledge and we must use it to make sure that we're serving everybody in the watershed the best of our abilities. Now, the UTRCA, created by Order in Council on September 18th, 1947, for here ever to be known as UTRCA Day, maybe? I don't know. Put that out there. Its inaugural meeting was held October 20th, 1947. At that time, there were 34 members on that board. 33 of them showed up. I think that shows the significance of what people thought of this organization when it started and the importance of it and the role it had to play. Now, you may think that people around the table, it was hard to get anything done. Try to find some direction, especially at the first meeting. Maybe everybody's just going to get to know each other. That was certainly not the case. By looking at the meeting, the minutes of this first regular meeting, it was clear that these individuals came across to start this process with a vengeance. So just as a slight review from all the minutes to just this part, their first meeting, they formed committees to look at drainage works across from different counties across the watershed. They authorized the purchase of land for reforestation and conservation. They decided to hire engineers to look at building two dams above St. Mary's on Trout Creek and another on the middle branch above Woodstock. They even talked about Harrington Dam, and some things never changed because I know Zora Council just talked about that this week. So, and they also decided on payment for board members. So again, some things never change. The other thing that they did was they agreed to assess the member municipalities, which we just did today, except it was for $10,000. So a little bit less, even with inflation. So, and that all took place between noon and 4:30, which included a lunch. So again, a lot of things have changed. And a lot of those members dealing with those same goals, we still have the same goals that we're dealing with today. Keeping people safe from flooding, improving agriculture, protecting land for future generations. The time keeps ticking, but the motivation for the formation of this conservation stays the same. You know, other goals were added over the years. Certainly recreation was a big part of that one, mostly in the 50s and 60s. But what I think is important about all of this for us to understand is that there are others that came before us and there are others that will be here afterwards, but the work continues on and on. We need to do our best not to get lost in the challenges of the day. And our utmost to look at the long-term goals of the authority and make the decisions that will make the authority move towards them. Those 34 people did the heavy lifting for us. They did the formation of this amazing organization, and the residents and the environment of the watershed has benefited greatly. Certainly, we all know that we can't do this alone, and we certainly wasn't the case then. We need partners around the table, many of them in the room today. It's been a goal of mine, and I think of the board, to increase our relationship with our member municipalities, and I think there's been great strides in that over the last, not only in my term as chair, but previous chairs. I know Alan's in the room as well. There's been a lot of conversations to happen to make those communications better. And I think a lot of that has to do as well with elected officials being around the table. The province made a lot of this changes. We certainly had some great board members over the years who were not elected officials. But the positive of having elected officials around the table is we get that increased communication with our member municipalities. That knowledge around those council tables grows, and it makes those efforts easier and easier to be explained our mission. Now, the one thing we are missing around the table, who used to be at the table, is the province. At that first initial meeting, there was a provincial representative, and they worked hand in hand with the board to create the policies and the funding needed to make sure those items happen. Not at 50 to 75% funding from the provincial government. We're certainly way below that now. And so we need to make strides through our municipal partners to make sure that we have that province come back to the table. If they were at the table, then there's a good chance that they may be able to see the good work that we're doing and be able to help with that funding and move those goals that they share as well forward, and maybe not only see clearly in the value that's provided. To the board, I want to thank everyone of you for allowing me the opportunity to sit in the chair over the last 2 years. I can't explain how much this organization means to me. And I've grown to respect all the work that it does. In 2016, I was appointed midterm through a term, much like Jean just was. And certainly growing up in Ingersoll, I grew up on the floodplain, and I could hear some dirty words coming from my parents and the neighbors about maybe not being allowed to do stuff that truly wasn't safe to begin with. So the system was working, but it's an amazing organization, and I certainly want to thank everybody for that opportunity. This board has been most rewarding part of my career so far. And not only for the work that gets done here, but it's also because of the people that I've been able to meet at the table. And I certainly respect each and every one of you. I certainly want to acknowledge the past chairs in the room, Sandy Levin and Alan, your leadership. I can tell you right now that I probably didn't deserve to have this role. You know, there's a lot of big people who've had the shoes when you look back at the records who've taken on this role, but it's been a role of a lifetime, and I know Dean's going to do a great job. I also want to thank Tracy. Tracy, you stepped into this role during a hurricane of changes from the province, and then that got wrapped up in a storm of COVID, and certainly not only kept the authority afloat, but you've also transformed your team into an organization for the future. And certainly that's impressive, and it deserves respect for sure. There's always more work to do, whether that be moving the goals forward or building better relationships or putting out fires. And I can walk away from the chair and down the table next to Sandy. I guess that's the past chair section. Knowing that our next chair, Dean, is more than able to fulfill that role. His skill set and dedication are second to none. Nobody takes better notes than Dean. And nobody takes worse ones than me. That was very much appreciated. During Dean's role as vice chair, I can't thank him enough for his dedication and knowledge and the great talks over messaging and did you see this? Did you see that? It was invaluable to being a success, well, in my own opinion, a success. And I can't thank him enough for that. So I just also want to say thank you to our staff for everything that you've done. Your passion and knowledge is truly inspiring. It allows the board to sleep at night knowing there's a competent group of individuals that are working every day to reach those goals set 77 years ago. So on behalf of every resident, and this is where my mayor hat comes on behalf of every resident within the watershed, I want to say thank you for everything that you do. The board gets to meet once a month and we get to make decisions, but you are truly the organization and you are truly what makes this work. So thank you very much. And now I will turn it over to our chair, Dean.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate the kind words and sentiments. And yeah, I'll start off by showing my appreciation to Brian for his leadership and dedication to the organization over the years. Myself, this is, I started on this board after the 2022 elections, so I'm still relatively new to everything here at the board, so kind of similar to learning in the fast lane, as I call it. But Brian's leadership and experience and guidance has helped me through getting started, as well as that of Sandy's I'll say untold wealth of knowledge and experience. But also the other board members have lent their support and assistance, as well as Tracy and her staff. And it's quite a pleasure and an honor to work with this organization and this group. It's quite easy to see how dedicated and committed everyone is to their roles within the organization, whether it's the person that greets me at the gate in season when we come in for meetings, or any of the people, staff that work in their various departments that engage us at the board level or out at on the individual municipalities of the watershed, making presentations to council, or just being in the public at public events. It's great to see how everyone truly pulls together, as Brian says, and makes this organization as successful and prosperous as it is. So I want to thank everyone on behalf of myself and the board. You are upper Thames, and I encourage everyone to advocate on behalf of Upper Thames to people that you know, people in the community, because a lot of great things that are done here aren't, as much as we communicate it through newsletters and meetings and so forth, there's a great story that needs to be told throughout the community, and I encourage everyone to do that. As Brian had mentioned in his remarks, we continue to find a way to further the goals and objectives of Upper Thames, and through connecting and engaging and collaborating, we see the great results that we can achieve when we all work together. And again, it's that communication and that spirit of cooperation and advocacy that's important on the way forward into the future. And I guess I thought of a remark that I learned from Stan Conley. He was the general manager of Luby Construction. I'm a civil engineer by training, and bridge construction is what we worked on. And quite often we had to deal with building over top of rivers, a lot of fast flowing rivers. And his instructions to us about water was, you can't control it, you can only manage it. So it just seems like a fitting comment here at the Conservation Authority, where water seems to be the main focus of what we do. And realizing that we can't control everything, whether it's in the physical realm or in the financial realm or regulatory realm, but we can do our best to manage it as best as we can. And as Brian had pointed out, I think at our meeting earlier that not everything goes perfect, but generally we try and do the best we can for as many people as we can with what we've got. So looking forward to working with the board and the staff in the upcoming year, working with the public as well. And it's really energizing and inspiring to see what our staff do and what the public does to enhance our communities. And I guess one final note to past chair Alan Dale, I see him over there. I remember Alan was leaving the board as I was starting, and I remember his remarks, his parting remarks of the story about the donkey and the well. And Alan told the story about the donkey in the well, that poor donkey down at the bottom of the well, stuck, can't get out. Everyone in the community, kind of in the village, looking down the well, throwing rocks and throwing things on poor old donkey. And donkey's looking up, he kind of sees all this stuff coming down on him, kind of ducks to the left, ducks to the right. But after a while of doing that, donkey noticed that, well, hey, I'm getting closer to the daylight with all this stuff that they're throwing at me. And over time, poor old donkey, he was able to pull himself out of the well. After enough things have been challenges and things have been thrown his way, he finally found a way out of the well. And I can happily report to Alan that although in Upper Thames in our situation as the donkey, we're not completely out of the well yet, but we are getting closer to daylight. So thank you for those words of inspiration, Alan. So once again, welcome to this part of our program. I call it the fun part. We did the nuts and bolts part with the budget and other things. So looking forward to the rest of the program, and I'll turn it over to Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Brian. It's always great to hear from our chairs. And yes, I remember Alan's story quite well. And another tidbit from Alan was always, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think Joe's here using that with our new regs officer. He loves that saying too, and is embracing it well. So with that, yeah, lots of change has happened over this past year. Lots have been accomplished, and just thought this is an opportunity for us to look back on our accomplishments. So put together a little bit of a slideshow that will run itself. Hopefully you'll recognize some people in the photos and recognize some of the projects that we wanted to highlight. Really realize that there was a lot going on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Emily to start the presentation. Maybe I'll turn down the lights here too.
accomplished. But certainly congratulations to all staff that made that possible. Always nice to look back to see what we've done and looking forward to everything that we've got planned for 2025. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to our presentation of the Conservation Award. Dean, if you want to come up.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, the 2024, a lot was done. And there's a saying that the days are long and the years are short, but we can certainly see that there was quite a bit of activity and action packed into 2024. Not the least of which, we have some conservation awards to hand out. And again, very energized and inspiring, very energizing and inspiring our citizens within the watershed. And the first presentation is the Inspiration Award. The Inspiration Award is presented to a teacher, group, or school that through their actions, projects, or programs encourage watershed residents to take an interest in the natural environment, create connections with nature, and contribute to its preservation. So I will call on Danny Zano to introduce our 2025 Inspiration Award recipients. Danny?
Okay. I am very pleased and honored because they're just amazing to introduce from Stratford District Secondary School, which I'll refer to as SDSS, teacher Christine Ritzma, and students representing the Eco Club. We have Lucy Chung, we have Ewan Mann, and Zach Kritzer, this year's recipients of the Inspiration Award. A bit about, so Christine started teaching in 1990 and started the Green Industries course at Northwestern Secondary School, as it was known before 2019 when it became SDSS. The Green Industries course is open for students in grade 10, 11, and 12 to develop knowledge and skills related to agriculture, forestry, horticulture, and landscaping, and explore different career options in those fields. There are 120 students that take the course per year. The students also maintain and operate the SDSS greenhouse, where they grow herbs and vegetables for the school's culinary arts program. Their annual May plant sale to raise funds for the program, as well as establish event in Stratford community, and sells out very quickly. Every year they raise about $6,000 to sustain the program. So very successful. For many years, Christine has also brought the environment specialist high school major students from SDSS for certification programs out to Wildwood Conservation Area. Christine's passion has inspired her students to pursue post-secondary studies in the environmental field and other related fields. Christine is a very humble person. When I told her about this reward, she said, it's all about the kids. It's all about the students. Now, the Eco Club is a student-led club which meets weekly to raise awareness regarding environmental issues and advocate for change, not only in the school community, but in Stratford as well. They have appeared in delegations before Stratford City Council and were instrumental in having council declare a climate emergency in 2020. They have planted trees and wildflowers with us. They helped the school's greenhouse and plant sale and have fundraised to purchase a compost cow for their digs garden in the school's courtyard. They also implemented an urban farm initiative in partnership with the other community organizations where products is grown for the community. Just recently, members of the Eco Club spoke at the February 10th meeting of Stratford City Council in regard to not including a new community energy liaison position in their 2025 budget. The position would have assisted the city's climate change program manager with the implementation of the Community Climate Action Plan. After their presentation, a motion was made and carried to include the position in the city's 2025 budget. The SDSS Eco Club is a prime example of the power of youth and how they can influence positive change in their community.
I thought of Christine because she is an inspiration for so many students throughout the years. She runs a green industry course for students in grade 10, 11, and 12. And these students learn about the environment, learn about careers in the environment, and they actually grow plants in the greenhouse. And these plants are used in the culinary arts program at the high school. They also do an annual plant sale, which raises funds for the program, and they raise $6,000 each year to help sustain the Green Industries program. Christine is always looking for opportunities for these students, whether it's coming out tree planting with us, doing wildflower plantings, anything in the community to get the students out there and learning about the environment. We've also done presentations to her green industry classes and talked about different careers that they can go into. Christine is also the advisor to the student-run Eco Club at the school, and the Eco Club raises awareness about environmental issues not only at their school but also in the city of Stratford. One of the Eco Club's greatest accomplishment was having the city of Stratford declare a climate emergency in 2020. They appeared before council to state their case, and the emergency was adopted. The Eco Club has also started many projects, one of which was an urban farm project in Stratford, which grows plants and vegetables that can be used by the community. Future projects include hosting TEDx talks for Stratford youth on sustainable practices and tips for teens in Stratford and talking about their urban farm. The Green Industry course and the Eco Club are part of who Christine is. She takes the environment very seriously and always looking for new ways to engage her students. Her work makes a difference not only in the school, but in the community. Thank you, Christine and the Eco Club, for being such an inspiration to your school and your community.
And the Eco Club for your efforts. I'm going to provide this to our chair. To recognize both of you for your efforts. I know this is so dainty, I'm gentle there.
Thanks, Tracy, and thanks, Danny. Yes, so this time it's with great pleasure that we invite Christine and her Eco Club students to come up and accept their award.
That's actually the other way around.
Very well.
Whoa, yeah.
Dean, can we get a little?
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's a great idea.
The phone is yours. Go ahead, Lee.
On behalf of the Eco Club, I would like to thank the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority for recognizing us for this award. As young people, we recognize that it is our responsibility to do our part for the planet. I've been a member of Eco Club since grade 9, and it's been an amazing opportunity just being part of this group. We are proud of the group that we have currently and all the people who have been part of the club since it was founded in 2019. People have come and just realize that it's such a great experience. All three of us have been chairs of the club at some point. And it's great group to be part of. We appreciate all the effort that the UTRCA has put into environmental protection in the area. And we would like to extend a special thank you to Vanny for nominating our club and all the help he's given us over the years. Additionally, as students, we would like to extend our utmost gratitude to our staff advisor and fearless leader, Christine Ritzma, for her invaluable advice and dedication to our club for so many years. I met Miss Ritzma in grade 5. Through the SOAR gifted program at our school, and it's just so cool that I've gotten to come back and work with her through grade 9 and 10 and 11, 12, and all these years. And yeah, thank you.
Just want to thank Bonnie for recommending us for the award. It's an honor to be recognized alongside these amazing group of students. These are some of my seniors. Okay, we have a group of about 20-25, and we all wanted to come. So, so I've promised them a road trip in spring. We'll go. It's funny to be at this part of my career. You know, both Green Industries and the Eco Club began in 2019, right before COVID. And I had just received my first section of Green Industries. By April of that year, schools were closed. Suddenly, I was out in my garden and forest filming, of all things, YouTube videos for my grade 11 class, teaching them how to find wild leeks, split seed potatoes, and more. It was incredible that first year the program was shaped by a global pandemic. And at the time I worried the course wouldn't survive because I was not good in those YouTube videos. But instead it grew, and right now we have about 4 sections, and we're really proud of the program from grade 10 to grade 12. The Eco Club also launched under difficult circumstances. With in-person meetings restricted, we met virtually on Wednesday afternoons and even Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's a new meaning for extracurricular, you know, like it was incredible. Despite the challenges, this group has pulled off incredible initiatives. From hosting a citywide webinar on climate change to planting trees and shrubs in front of the school during that COVID year. It was a stressful time, but it brought us closer together. And they relied on each other, and in doing so, built something pretty meaningful. It has been a wild and exciting journey, and I continue to be inspired by this passionate group of young people. They're making a real difference in our community, despite every obstacle. Their impact was evident when they presented at the Stratford Budget meeting and successfully changed the minds of city councillors, and also taking on a new initiative, the Urban Farm, which is also proved to be an incredible project. Again, despite many obstacles. Again, thank you for this nomination. You've been, Bonnie, and again, Albertans have been a huge part of the Eco Club and Green Industries. And I truly appreciate your guidance as we work to bring environmental stewardship into every classroom at Stratford District Secondary School.
Thanks, Christine, and to Lucy and your colleagues. Was encouraged to hear that all 3 of you are past chairs. In a few years, we will have some openings on the board. Many hands make light work, so excellent, thank you. Our next award, this conservation award is presented to a watershed resident with passion and understanding of the conservation needs in their area and a desire to take action. The recipient demonstrates exceptional stewardship in protecting or improving the natural environment on their property or public land. So at this time, I'll give the floor to Tracy, and she can continue further with more details.
I also wanted to recognize today, Kayla's parents are with us, both Wendy and Dave Berger. So maybe if you could stand so everyone can see. Yeah, we always appreciate them coming to present this award. It's such a special award for us, past staff members. So with that, I'm going to introduce Brandon to talk about our receivers of the award.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, a few months ago when this award was announced, I didn't hesitate to nominate Brian Elizabeth Wheeler for this conservation award. I first met Brian and Libby in 2018 when they called to enroll their property, now known to us as the Wheeler Tract, into the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program. Most of the folks that I meet with that, their main goal out of that is to get the tax break, to get their property in that program. But it was evident right away that that was not the driving force for Brian and Libby. Driving force was to learn more about their property, protect it for the long term. So, and then, fast forward several years ahead here and getting a call from Brian and Libby and talking to them over the last year or so about that property. And as you'll hear in the video, not only, the massive effort and contribution on their part to actually donate 85 acres of their woodlands to the Upper Thames, but all the work that they've done on the property, before I knew them and since then, to protect that property and enhance that property, working with folks like Scott Gillingwater, Kathy Quinlan, and Brenda as well, looking after the property and just learning about the vegetation, the wildlife on that property, just shows their passion and their effort over the years, as well as organizations that they've worked with over the years, like Thames Talbot Land Trust and so on and so forth. So just want to thank Brian and Libby for their donation to their property and all the work that they've done on that property over the years. So, thank you.
So I first met Brian and Libby Wheeler back in 2018. They contacted me to do a Managed Forest Tax Incentive Plan, or MIF tip, on their property. And generally, when I go out to these properties, I go out and meet the landowner. They'll say, yeah, we have we have deer and we have fox and raccoon on the property and a couple of birds. Well, that's when I knew that Brian and Libby were unique in that passion to protect the land, and because they gave me a thumb drive of a whole series of pictures they took on the property and a massive list of the birds and the different wildlife on the property. So, and then right away in 2018, when I talked to them, they might want to look at controlling some of the invasive buckthorn. Immediately they were on it. Went out and bought some equipment and some materials and started, controlling that buckthorn, and would check in with me from time to time on their progress. So it was amazing just to have that initial start and to see that passion right from the start when I first met them in 2018. So a few years later, in 2023, Brian and Libby contacted the Upper Thames about the potential to donate their property, and going through the ecological gift program was amazing because that just opened up the amount of information they have, and some of the SAR, species at risk, on the property, like the spiny soft-shell turtle, painted turtle. It became apparent all the activities that they have done on the property in sort of the lens of conservation. So all the tree planting they've done on the property, which helps hold the soil, prevent soil erosion. It's a very steep slope down to Fish Creek, so that's one piece of it. They really helped to sort of diversify the species that are on that property through the plantings they've done. So it's speaks to their dedication. Year after year, going after invasive species in buckthorn is not fun at all. The dedication that they have to continue that annually is just amazing. And how detail-oriented Brian and Libby are on the eco-gift program. That level of detail, that attention to detail, making sure every sentence is correct and proper, and so that's just super key. And why it makes it important for me for them to receive this award. All the work that you've put into that property will not be lost, will not be forgotten, and our work that we continue on that property will be a legacy to the work that you've done and the passion that you've shown for that land. Congratulations on the award, and it's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure working with you over the years through the MIF-TIP and on through into this land donation. So we look forward to seeing you on the property in the years to come. Thank you.
Brandon, for that video presentation. And at this time, it is with great pleasure to present the Kayla Berger Stewardship Award to Brian and Elizabeth Wheeler.
Thing is, who's that woman you were with in the video? On an April morning in 1988, I was reading the London Free Press and I saw a classified ad for a 125 rural property on Fish Creek, Perth County, north of Grandin. And I said to Brian, we should go and look at this property. So we called the realtor and he said, today it's a sleet storm. And it was raining, sleeting, everything. We said, yes, today we'll go alone. So we went and bundled up, headed out, hiked the perimeter of the 125 acres, which took us about 3 hours. And as we were finishing our hike, I climbed into the crook of a huge old willow beside the creek. And I looked down into the water and I saw a pike. Sold. Subsequent years, we spent countless hours at what we called the farm. We blazed and mowed trails, watched birds and wildlife, and paddled our canoe on the creek. As well as having the MNR plant acres of white pine, cedar, and walnut, we would gather seeds of Carolinian species wherever we went. Brian would carefully plant the seeds in pots and tend them, some for years, until they were strong enough to be planted out on the farm. One year I counted, he had 485 individual plants growing in solo cups or pots on our deck. They had to be tended over the summer, where we go to the cottage. So into the car they went. There was no room for me. After planting, Brian would build and install wire cages to protect all these new trees and shrubs from damage from the deer. And we kept a list of the many species of birds and wildlife we encountered. Just last year, we added a long-eared owl and a flying squirrel. We spend a lot of time there just listening and watching. And on a good spring day, with a chorus of frogs and toads croaking, and perhaps a northern water thrush, a black-billed cuckoo, or a brown thrasher singing in the background, we would see all at one time a pair of snapping turtles, an eastern spiny soft-shelled turtle, about 30 painted turtles, a mink, and maybe a beaver if we just sat still. Thank you to Caleb's parents, and we accept this award.
reach the afternoon. It's been a very positive experience owning that property. We made many friends, like-minded and knowledgeable friends who've helped us to observe and understand and to focus our efforts on stewardship. In particular, I would like to thank Brandon. He, as he mentioned, first became involved with the managed forest plan, but then the transfer of ownership was quite a complicated process. So I know he's a goalie, but I would like to use these words anyway. Thank you for your knowledge and hard work and patience in stick handling our way through that. In a way, our donation really began quite a long time ago, 73 years ago, because the 1952 report, which gave direction to the young authority as it existed at that time, mentions the Fish Creek Valley. It says words to the effect, it's not much, the valley portion is not much good for farming, but it is valuable in terms of being a wetland. It has some significant forest on it, and it helps prevent downstream flooding. So for those reasons, it should be acquired and managed accordingly. And some of it was, but significant portions remain in private ownership, including the portion we donated. But then in later years, a previous owner had M&R plant trees on an open section of it. And as Libby mentioned, we did the same thing early on. Later on, the valley became recognized in municipal planning documents as natural environment. And then we had the managed forest plan prepared, which gave an inventory of what's there in the terrestrial environment and gave directions for its management. And on the aquatic side, the authorities' stream monitoring program provided lots of data on what's happening in the watercourse. So combined all of those things, we came up with 17 species at risk on the property. So all of those things I just mentioned, starting with the 52 report, helped justify the properties being part of the federal government's ecological gifts program. And in that, Environment and Climate Change Canada, along with Revenue Canada, provides tax benefits to the donation of an ecologically significant property to an approved conservation organization. The organization generally is a conservation authority or a land trust. So in our case, that meant that when we made the donation, we did not have to pay capital gains on the property. The tax credit that we could receive would not be limited to 3/4 of our taxable income for the year of the donation, as would otherwise be the case. And that tax credit could be used over a period of 10 years rather than the usual 5 years. So that made a huge difference to us in the practicality of making the donation. And the federal government had another role in that it, through a program that recognized that forests remove carbon from the atmosphere, the authority received a grant which helped cover the cost of making the transition in ownership. So that's how it all happened, a sequence of events going back that far. We're very pleased the property now resides in the capable hands of the authority, and we very much appreciate receiving the Taylor Berger Stewardship Award. Thank you.
And Brandon for the nomination and the presentation that was put together. But most of all, thanks to you, Brian and Elizabeth. Not only just for endowing us with such a great gift, but all the work and dedication done in the years prior to and the foresight to nurture the property and protect it and grow it. And well, it's great to see the rewards of that hard work. And on behalf of the board and the staff, and the communities in our watershed, we're very grateful for what you have done. And I'm still struck by your words, Elizabeth, about when you said, if you just stop and take a moment and listen and observe, we can all recognize the blessings that we have around us. So thank you once again. So our next award, our final award is it's the Board of Directors Award. And it's presented under exceptional circumstances to an individual or group that has made a significant contribution to the protection or improvement of the natural environment in the Upper Thames River watershed. And at this time, I will invite Teresa Hollingsworth to introduce the 2025 Board of Directors Award recipient. Teresa.
For mentioning that it's afternoon when I almost said good morning. I actually wrote down good morning, so I'm really glad. This is what a list of award recipients here, and I can't believe this. It's with great pleasure that I introduce you today to our Board of Directors Conservation Award recipient. Try not to be emotional about this. I cannot think of someone more deserving of this award. Patty's a very familiar face here at the Upper Thames and has been a very important member of the Upper Thames education team for over 20 years. Most staff have assumed that Patty is a fellow employee, a paid employee. What many people may not realize is that Patty has been volunteering her time and talents all of this time. She's been over 20 years working here side by side with us. No paycheck. Patty came to us. Yeah, you should know she's going, what? No. I thought it was a lump sum, yeah. Patty came to us after a stint with the Asaba Bayfield Conservation Authority, with the Thames Valley District School Board. And as a very talented teacher, she's been very involved in all aspects of our educational programming, and really has consistently challenged us to create meaningful learning opportunities. She's been at both Wildwood and at Fanshawe, and she has made exceptional efforts and significant contributions to our success. And Patty, we are truly thankful, and congratulations on this award. I'm going to let the video speak to some more of the specifics.
The Community Education and Partnerships team nominated Patty for the Board of Directors Award because of the incredible dedication and work she has brought to our unit over the past 20 plus years. We have been so blessed to have Patty as part of our team for such a long period of time, and I really feel like it takes a truly unique, kind and giving person to give of their time, their creativity, their wisdom in the ways that Patty has over the past 20 years. Patty has really been involved in all aspects of education, but particularly has made a big impact on our nature school programs as well as Map Compass GPS. She has taken these programs, created activities, piloted them, refined them, made them the wonderful programs that they are, and she really put her heart into it. So we know that these programs are the best they can be because Patty was involved.
Patty, who knew when you approached Karen and I about volunteering at Wildwood that more than 20 years later you'll be receiving the Board of Directors Award for impacting thousands of students in our programs here at the Upper Thames. You've always been able to think outside the box, and you've been a valuable member of the team.
The energy, the life that she brings to those programs, you know that is going to create special memories, really instill that conservation ethic in those children from a young age. We also see that she's bringing high school students out, you know, students that might not be super engaged with nature, but she is able to bring something simple to life and make it exciting and make the kids interested in learning with it. So we are very grateful to her. I feel like this award is a wonderful tribute to the work she's done, the difference that she's made, and all the lives that she's touched over the time that she's been here.
Gonna add, because I too was like many staff and did not realize. Probably about 10 years ago, I realized it. And in addition to your award, we're happy to present you with a lifetime pass to our parks as well. Retired staff.
Like that. Patty, please come up and accept your. Thank you.
Here's everyone afterwards.
Goodness. Wow. This is huge. This is huge for me because I'm just doing what I love to do. For me to give and share my knowledge, my skills, my creativity, it's never been work for me. It's a passion. It's so much fun. And it's a joy. I'm deeply honored to receive this award. Thank you for this incredible recognition. I'm not the educator by my own merits. I'm the educator because of friends, colleagues, teammates, administrators, and leaders who have helped me along the way and have shaped me into the educator I am today. Thank you to the Upper Thames, specifically the education team, Fiona, Cam, Melina, Matt, Caroline, and educators in the past. And I can't forget the partnership team, Brad, April, Tom, to my supervisors, Bonnie and Kirby, and my manager, Teresa. You have all given me the freedom to share my ideas, to be innovative and creative with children, youth, and adult nature programming and delivery here at Upper Thames. This type of empowerment helps me to want to give of my time, my energy, my passion, and my skills. I specifically remember when I called Bonnie and Karen Mortimer, who has since retired, asking if there were any opportunities that I could be involved with nature education at Wildwood CA. I was welcomed wholeheartedly, and so began my stint here at Upper Thames. So thank you, Bonnie, for inviting me in. And to Teresa, I know you had a big part in that too. A shout out to my hubby, Pat. You continually support my ideas and what I value in outdoor education. You help fuel me to be a better educator, to be a better steward for the natural environment. You're my biggest fan. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Also, I can't not include a thank you to nature. What does that mean? What does that even look like? It's about the wowness
the spark that I get whenever I take the time to be in a natural setting, whether it be when I'm by myself, with someone else, or like 8, 20, 50, hundreds of other students and adults. It's a thank you of gratefulness for our natural ecosystems, for all they provide emotionally, scientifically, and spiritually. Now, if you're a bird nerd, you may know the proverb that says, when the bird and the book disagree, always believe the bird. That quote reinforces my understanding of a great verse that Walt Whitman wrote. He was a poet of the 19th century. That's for you, Tom. Come forth into the light of things. Let nature be your teacher. This verse resonates with me because it really encompasses the value of nature. I find myself often using it as a mantra. I don't really feel that I woke up one day and said, I want to be an educator. I knew I wanted to be involved in the natural environment somehow, maybe a scientist, a wildlife biologist, with something to do with like terrestrial mammals or marine mammals or water ecology or species of birds, or a nature interpreter at a provincial or national park. Conservation authorities were not on my radar at that time. When I think of my story, I think of what grounds me. What are the things at my core to keep me going? I can place many experiences I've had that speak to these concepts, but I want to share one particular job I had with the Canadian Wildlife Service and a team of wildlife scientists. I'm on a remote island in the Pacific Ocean, north of Vancouver Island, south of Haida Gwaii, an island with a lighthouse and not much else. Now imagine on any particular day, you're lying on your side on the forest floor of a rainforest. You have your arm in a burrow up to your armpit, and you're searching for a nestling, a chick of the rhinoceros auklet. You're collecting data, important data on the nesting behavior, diet, and overall ecology of this seabird. All of a sudden, you wonder, what else, who else is going to hear about this cool bird? As a scientist, this information is gold, but will the general public ever really hear about it or care about it? I was getting all this nature knowledge. I wanted to share it. I knew that then that just being a scientist was not enough for me. So open wide the gates of nature education. Here I am. Okay, so we're about halfway through. Remember, I'm used to conversing with kids about nature for hours outside. I truly see the value of providing nature connections that positively change someone's story with respect to the environment. Connections that change their perspective to be good stewards for the environment. So think of that place in nature where you feel the most at home. A pond, a riverbank, a beach, a meadow, a forest, sitting under a tree, maybe a rock. Spend some time in your mind's eye and walk around that place again, remembering what drew you to it. And think about what made that place special to you. You know what? All those feelings, all those thoughts are about how you feel. And those feelings are what makes each one of us strive to start or continue to the process of care. As an environmental educator, I can be a conduit for sharing, for providing nature experiences such as those moments that help to create feelings that give you that wow reaction, that desire to care for the natural environment. That is what brings me joy. That is what's at my core. I've witnessed over and over again the wow moments when someone, regardless of age, recognizes the wonder, the excitement, the transformative moment that the power of nature has to change their behavior, their attitude. I get excited by how just one small moment or many can inspire an individual person to make positive changes for our natural world. And don't underestimate the positive impact you can have when you share your nature experiences. These experiences resonate in me. How to spark the wow moments. With innovative, creative, action-oriented experiences, we can all spark the wow, awesomeness moments. Think of what motivates you with regards to caring for the natural world. I hope you can find it in your life, in your daily life, to give, to inspire folks in some sort of life-changing nature moment. As environmental educators, or any other environmental career for that matter, we may not see the impact that we have until decades later. How have we influenced our future decision makers? We may not know if we are part of someone's story and their best relationship with nature, but just know that as board members, as staff, or as volunteers, you are champions for the environment. Champions. And that is empowering, is inspiring, is joyful, is contagious. Imagine the impact you too can have on others. We are in the business of changing behavior for the good of our natural world. It's so important that we provide children and youth with opportunities to connect with nature. There's so many things around us that steer us away to not be in harmony with nature. Children and youth are perhaps the most disconnected from nature than they've ever been. So remember, creating and building connections with nature takes us to the essence of wonder and awness, showing children, actually showing all of us, a path to becoming better people and ultimately more effective stewards of the environment. I know that the Upper Thames sees the value in nature connections and implementing programs for children and youth, and I hope they will always continue to see it as a priority in their programs to unite stewards for today and tomorrow. I am so grateful and humbled for this honor, and I'm very overwhelmed by it, but I'm also very excited that I've had this opportunity to educate and to inspire caregivers, nature caregivers, of this watershed and beyond. So I just want to again say how much I appreciate being part of this organization, this greater community of individuals who dedicate themselves to motivate, empower, and to inspire people to care for our natural world. Thank you. Indeed, thank you.
Thanks, Patty, for a very inspiring message. Leaves us all with a lot to carry with us. Thanks for being that link, that conduit to everyone that you teach and deliver that wow factor. It's quite apparent that not everything can be taught this way. You've mastered the art of using your mind and your heart to deliver an impactful and long-lasting message to everyone. So we appreciate it. Thank you. Next on our we have the presentation of staff service awards. So I'll invite Tracy to come to the podium and I will read the recipients with their awards as their notes.
Yes, I think if you can show online, was planning to be online. Stay the whole morning.
Here.
Anyway, there's a couple of individuals that are not today. I want to recognize, though, Ben Defoe did receive his 10-year service award. He's currently the property superintendent, but he's had a few different jobs over his 10-year duration here. Celebrating 15 years is Brent Fisher, our manager of lands, facilities, and conservation areas, and he's currently on vacation. Lucky guy. But starting off with 20-year service awards, we have Ryan McNaughton, who is our graphic design specialist. Unfortunately, he couldn't be away. He is away today too. Unfortunately, for sad circumstances, a memorial service he's attending. So, but
Today, for 20 years, we have Phil Sim, our GIS system specialist. Phil's at the back, if you can come up. Also celebrating 20 years is Damian Schofield. Damian. Our conservation areas coordinator.
Damien, congratulations. Thank you. You're welcome.
Celebrating 25 years. Wow, I can't believe this. Paul Switzer, our land management technician. 25 years is Mary Sloan. Mary's our compensation rewards specialist. Now we get into some of the bigger years here, 30 years. Jen Howley. Feel like almost every person, I'm like, they're currently our health and safety, but they've had other positions here at the Upper Towns. Constant theme. And then again, Michelle McDonald. Another 30-year service award and currently our financial analyst for expenses. And last but not least, someone who's close to the podium, 35 years is Brenda Gallagher. Our forestry technician, vegetation specialist, and knower of all vegetation, I would say. Anyway, congratulations, staff.
All right, thanks, Tracy, and moving on to chair's comments. So to dovetail with the presentation of the awards to our staff and our individual award recipients, it's a true measure of the strength and diversity and the knowledge and the abilities of an organization when we're able to recognize long-standing relationships with our staff and with our volunteers in our community. And it's quite an honor and a privilege to be able to be amongst you here today to celebrate your accomplishments and your achievements and not only your own personal success, but the success that you brought to the organization and the communities represented by the watershed. So once again, I want to take the time to give everyone a round of applause. We're getting closer to the end of our agenda today. It's been a successful awards event this year, and we had a successful meeting. We stick handled or navigated our way through some important budgetary and policy discussions. And as I noted at our meeting this morning, and again through former Chair Alan Dale's comments, we're working our way towards daylight. There's lots of challenges that lie before the board and the staff, but I'm quite confident that we will all work together and pull together to meet those challenges as they arise. And find ways to connect, engage, and collaborate, and cooperate with each other, and advocate on behalf of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. So both myself and Vice Chair Mark Schadenberg, we look forward to working with the rest of our board colleagues and staff and the public to make 2025 an even more successful year in the future. So with that, I will open up the floor to any members' comments that we might have.
Let's see.
So noted. I'm the third last speaker before lunch, so I'm going to vacate the podium and hand it over to our General Manager, Tracy Annette. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I'm gonna be quick, because I know there's lunch waiting out there. But again, really just wanting to take this opportunity to recognize and celebrate the significant contributions of the Upper Thames dedicated staff. Said before, I want to say it as well. It's because of you that we're able to do the work that we are doing and able to get those messages and connections with nature out there. Certainly it's to advance our authority's mission and the work that we do every day. It's all because of our staff. So thank you for all you do. 2024 was a year of progress, collaboration, and significant efforts in all program areas. These efforts would not be possible without the support of our board of directors. So from staff, I wanted to express gratitude for all you do to help us do the work we can. So I think all staff and members should be very proud of our accomplishments in 2024 and certainly looking forward to 2025. So thank you all for that. Before we break for lunch, I'm going to pass things over to Michelle just for some reminders about where things are and the logistics of that. But also wanted to thank Michelle and Sean and Mike who are setting up this room in this unique configuration that we typically don't see, but managing to pull it all together for our event today. So thank you for that.
Okay, lunch is going to be inside of a lunchroom. You'll see the tables straight across, lying down both sides. So we can get everybody through as quickly as we can. If you are a vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, any other special dietary requirements, your sandwiches are in the lunchroom. Drinks are also in the lunchroom. So please make your way in there to grab one of those. The plates and the forks on the table, on the buffet table, those belong to Steel Grill. So after you're done, who's our caterers, after you're done, if you could put them in the black crates that are in the lunchroom. So I'm going to ask that board members and our special guests and award recipients, if you guys make your way to lunch first. And then if I could get some staff members to help me roll in some tables, we'll do a quick room change and get some tables set up in here so you can all come back in and have lunch. There's also space in the lunchroom to have lunch as well. And one last logistics thing, award winners, if you would like a box, the box that your award came in, just come see me afterwards so you're not carrying around a loose glass award. I can give you the box for that. That's everything.
Thanks, Michelle. So there being no further business, I declare this meeting adjourned at 1:01 p.m. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Here that I actually.